Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. People pleasing seems to be rampant, whether it's in the workforce or personally. We go out of our way to please everyone else except for ourselves. Now, how many of us put others first and put ourselves second or last? Today, we'll find out what our biggest risks are of unconscious people pleasing and how we can reconnect with our authentic selves after years of prioritizing others. Today, I'm joined by Kendra Reddy, an executive coach and speaker. Kendra, welcome to Empowered.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Kendra, it's funny. I was talking to a few friends and I said, the show's going to be about people pleasing. And they said, oh, I do that really well. So, you
Mhm.
say that the traditional definition of a people pleaser is inaccurate. Let's get into it. How so?
Oh, it was such a surprise to me because I've never identified as a people pleaser. My clients don't identify as people pleasers. And if you Google people pleaser, the sort of archetype that gets painted is someone who doesn't want to be a burden and can't say no and has this overwhelming desire to please others. The truth is, it people pleasing isn't a personality type. And it's more of a subtle state of mind. It's unconscious people pleasing more than it is this desire to actually make other people happy.
So let's dig in a bit deeper. What does people pleasing behavior actually look like?
Yeah, it's actually the exact opposite of the archetype that you'll find online. The people pleasers I know are high functioning, high responsible, super capable. Oftentimes they're described as indispensable when they're at work, and those are really great skills and qualities to have. They're the ones that get rewarded. The problem is for someone who is high functioning and who is ambitious, they're going to start to potentially overextend themselves. And we do that thinking it's going to make other people appreciate us more, but it doesn't. It actually, they end up valuing us less. They respect our comfort less. So it looks like unconscious people pleasing looks like overgiving, undercharging, always being the one to just smooth things over, anticipating people's needs, taking yourself out of the equation. You're trying to convince people. It's like a hyper vigilant and a responsibility for the emotional tone in the room.
So then what are the biggest risks and consequences of unconscious people pleasing?
Yeah, it is the stuff that gets us kind of chosen, right? Promoted, hired, proposed to, but it is first of all exhausting to try to be liked and appreciated by everyone all the time. So that energy takes away from you being creative and having, idea time, finding that sense of fulfillment and purpose in your personal relationships. It blocks intimacy and staying on that hyper arousal, that vigilance, that anticipatory thing. There's physical consequences to that too, like biologically. Anytime we have to suppress our or our authenticity, we abandon ourselves, and then no one wins.
This is true because, when you're trying to put others first, you actually put yourself last. And
Mhm.
sometimes when you are consciously or unconsciously doing this, nobody wins, really.
No one wins. It makes it weird because people can sense when someone isn't being authentic or when they're holding back or they're putting something on or making an extra effort. We may not say it, but we feel it and sense it in the air. And then perhaps that triggers something in us and we start doing it. It just erodes everything and it creates a lot more distance than it does connection. I'd way rather someone be just authentic and a little bit messy. That's real. I can relate to that than someone who's caretaking or trying to make things too easy.
So we've got less than a
Conflict is
minute.
good.
Oh, conflict is good. Okay, so let's talk about that. We've got about a minute left. Why is conflict
Mhm.
so good?
It's a necessary component of getting to truth. It's really just the meeting of difference. And through that meeting of difference is where we're going to find organic and authentic alignment. Just we're not used to being with no or navigating the process of figuring out, okay, well, if we don't like these things, right? That's a natural bias we have as humans, is negativity and filter things out and no. We have to go through that to get to the yes. It's part of the process, but we're just so trained to like, no, just smile and everyone get along and go teamwork.
So when we come back, we will discuss more about, going out of your way to people please because it's not such a good thing. Don't go away. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic, the hidden cost of being indispensable, rethinking people pleasing. So, Kendra, how do we tell the difference between being kind and being a people pleaser? Because as girls, we're always told to be nice, be kind. What's the difference?
Yeah, my gosh, we're so trained to be mercy givers, and it creates real inner turmoil because we're not trying. No one, I think, any gender is out there trying to be a jerk in everyday life, but especially as women, it's so trained into us. That's why I say it is unconscious people pleasing. Here's how to tell the difference. People pleasing is rooted in some kind of fear. It's either loss aversion, right? If I don't do this, you'll leave me, or if I do this, you'll leave me, or obligation. You have some kind of power over me. I'm obligated in some way to do this. There'll be consequences if I don't, or again, some kind of transaction, right? Um, so, kindness, on the other hand, is rooted in three very simple things: authentic desire. I want to do this for you. Consent, I have the choice to say yes or no, and it won't make a difference to our relationship. And goodwill, I really want to increase the quality of your life.
Where does this behavior actually start though? Because it's got to start somewhere, not when you're, a little person running around. It's got to be deeper than that.
It is deeper than that. It's an ancient survival mechanism. We're just wired to fit in, to belong, and to be part of a group for our safety, physical and otherwise. And so, this unconscious tendency does come from the primitive part of our brain, and it does show up when we are little girls. People pleasers start out as parent pleasers and turn into patriarchy pleasers. I was raised by a codependent, people pleasing parent. My mom was so busy just trying to make ends meet. She couldn't attune to us emotionally or otherwise. And so I had to take care of everyone, not because I wanted to, but because it was a safety mechanism. It kept
Mm.
me safe to keep her emotionally regulated and have some kind of connection. And so those superpowers, they for sure saved my life, and they made me successful in the workplace. But it also left me exhausted and resentful, which is part of the reason I quit my job. Um, because society and the workplace teach us and train us girls, especially, that we're valued only when we're being capable.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you talk about society. Let's look at
Hmm.
mainstream advice on how to
Hmm.
overcome people pleasing, because apparently it's misleading and it's confusing. Can you explain it to us?
Yeah, it was so confusing to me that it's taken me almost my whole life to start to figure it out, because the mainstream advice says things like set boundaries and prioritize yourself and take up space and just say no. And I have always thought, well, if it were that easy, like everyone would be doing it.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of courageous authenticity and confident presence to be able to do those things. They're very action oriented, and there's a lot of opposition and tension there, again, because of this narrative we've been fed our entire lives, and also because there's different energy. Being authentic requires vulnerability, which means soften, but taking up space requires sort of a coming forward in yourself and a confidence, and that's very different. So how do you hold that paradox alone? And so the place to go to start, I'd say, is actually to go into the tension of that. Most people can't handle it because it's uncomfortable, but the more you do it, the more you start to sharpen your senses, and you start to notice what's yours and what's not yours and where the boundaries are, and then you can start to do something with it.
I love the fact that you talked about vulnerability because I
Mm,
feel that in any relationship that you have to be vulnerable. You have to give a little of yourself. But a lot of people
mhm,
feel that it's taboo, and a lot of people think, no,
mm.
I should never be vulnerable.
Mm.
What do you say to those people?
I'd say again, don't fall for the archetype that is just broadly painted through mainstream media. Even that, look at how corrupt the word vulnerable is. Automatically, some part of our mind goes to weakness, or like there's almost like a shrinking. Oh, you're vulnerable, or you're at risk. It again, it's this thing. The mainstream advice around set boundaries and take up space. It means at some point you're gonna have to make an unpopular choice, and that's risky. And we hate risk.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. I actually like vulnerability because I think it builds your character.
Mhm.
But when we come back, we're going to talk about, shifting our energy around people pleasing. So please don't go away. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic, the hidden cost of being indispensable, rethinking people pleasing. So Kendra, how do we start to shift our energy around this then?
So again, if that mainstream advice is really feeling like, oh, I'm making all these uncomfortable choices, don't force yourself into it because you're just going to disconnect from yourself and it's going to be even more uncomfortable and even more inauthentic. So I always say start way smaller and go way slower. What are the elements or the energies that are you going to need around you to support you in doing those things? And I always think it's great to start to focus on building courage, because courage is the foundation for setting boundaries, for taking up space, for prioritizing yourself. So start to think about that. How do I build my strength? How do I build my courage? How do I build my clarity? How do I and stay with yourself first. And then the other thing you can do is start to pay attention and get really curious around what are the urges that I have. Just notice the urge to speak up, the urge to hold back, the urge to apologize, the urge to smooth over, and just where do those come from, and who profits from you following those urges blindly?
Interesting. So what's the first step then to building the courage?
Pause. I think when we so much can happen in such a small little pause. When you notice the urge and you pause before you respond, that's where the power is always in the response to what's going on. And it's in that pause is where you can remind yourself, here's where you build the courage, that you're not here to make everyone's life easy and to play small and obedient. You're here to have your own raw creative experience with life and to enjoy the process. And that's where you remember, oh, wait a second, yeah, well, you could almost come alive. I'm resourceful. I have options. I can set the tone here. Instead of saying sorry, I can say, hey, thanks for your patience, everyone.
And I think that's important because we apologize way too many times. And it's nice just to say, thanks for your patience. So instead of just pausing or over and above just pausing, how do we resist or overcome the urge after we've noticed it?
Yeah. Again, that people pleasing part of us was created to protect us. So learning to slow down and sit with that is where a lot of growth can happen. Every time you sit with the discomfort and an urge, it gets a little bit easier, and you do start to create this internal guidance system. You become more aware of your boundaries. You're able to make, again, these more conscious choices. You can not overgive. You can right size instead of self abandon. Basically, what's happening is you start to build trust in yourself, and that's where you start to get the courage to take up space and have more boundaries. Yeah.
I love that you just said that's where you get to build trust in yourself because I think that's one of the major problems as well. People don't
Mm.
feel the trust within.
Exactly. That internal guidance system is literally what saved my life. I've spent a lifetime building a relationship with myself that I know I have my back. And I've spent a lifetime of consciously working on that. And that's where there's so much power. Because then once you don't have to fight for that, then you can be generous and you can be open and you can be patient and you can be creative and you can have all those things. But if it's just this unconscious urge that you can't help, it's like an addiction almost.
So it's like an addiction. Oh, there's so
Mm,
many things in life that are like that. How does this help us reconnect with our authentic selves? Because authentic selves, I mean, that keeps popping up over and over again. So how does it
mhm.
help us reconnect? Um, after years of prioritizing others. And I mean, you've mentioned this so many times throughout today's interview.
Mm. Mhm, mhm. It 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 it's not a journey for everyone because it does require consistency and dedication and determination and a willingness to go to potentially some places that aren't going to feel that great. It's very healing, and it is a place again where a lot of growth can happen, but it's not going to happen by accident.
It is a
Yeah.
lot of hard work, and especially when, people go through a lot of different things in their lives, and they have a hard time navigating something difficult from within. And I love the fact
Mhm,
that you've said all along that it is a journey. It's taken you a lifetime to get through
mhm.
this. It's taken you
Yeah.
a lifetime to understand what's been going through your mind, through your mindset. And one of the key things
Yeah.
you talked about was, setting boundaries, because that's not always easy. When we come back from this next commercial break, I want to talk about setting boundaries and being
Yeah.
selfish, or is it mean? So don't go away.
Mhm.
Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic, the hidden cost of being indispensable, rethinking people pleasing. And I'm joined by Kendra Reddy, an executive coach and speaker. Kendra, before we went to break, we were talking about people think that setting boundaries is selfish or it's mean or it's difficult. Well, nothing good is easy. But
Mhm.
what's a more useful mindset when you're discussing boundaries?
Mhm. You know, again, that mainstream advice of take up space. Well, you can't take up space if you don't know where you begin and where you end. So I always say it's having boundaries, a helpful mindset. It's not about pushing people away. It's about keeping them close in ways that are healthy and clear. And the mainstream advice around boundaries is very seems to me anyway to be quite very aggressive, right? You set the boundaries and you enforce the consequences and it's one and done and you stick to that boundary. That again, I think goes against our natural human nature to actually live in kindness. And so the way I look at it is this: the people in your life, they need to be able to trust you to say no. They need to know that you're clear on your limits, what you can do. They need to know that you will tell them when they hurt your feelings, because otherwise they won't know where to stand and they won't know how to start to make repair and make amends. If you're always putting on a happy face, or you're just like, I'm fine, nothing is bothering me, no matter what's going on, people are gonna, again, they're gonna sense that and feel that, and then no one's gonna end up happy.
And it's so true. When you're trying to please everybody, no one is happy because
Mhm.
something is always left out on the sides. But I want to
Yeah.
talk about when we maintain boundaries. How do we maintain them without being perceived as difficult? Because sometimes women, when they try to be stern or they try to stand up for themselves, she's difficult. She's not easy to deal with or whatever. So what can we do?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is conscious boundaries are very different. And again, this mainstream advice is like you set this boundary and then you better stick to it. The truth is, boundaries are fluid and they're flexible and you're totally in control. There are times, situations, places where it makes sense. I'm going to actually loosen that boundary here. I'm going to this. It's a negotiation. And then when you have to stick to the boundary, or even if you decide you want to move it, you can take up space without sucking all the oxygen out of the room. So that confidence to set the boundary and to stick to it, or to set it and say, actually, now I'm going to change it. Surprise. It's confidence isn't walking into a room thinking you're better than everyone else. It's walking into a room being open and available, willing to learn, generous with your attention and your presence. And so, a boundary can be as simple as, listen, I don't know what's happening for you right now, but this is not working for me.
I love that. I love that. And, if you say this is not working for me, so many people will say, I'm so sorry. So, how do we stop over apologizing? I want to go over this again, or over
Hmm.
explaining ourselves, because a
Of course,
simple
yeah,
yes or
perfect.
no works, but too many people try to over explain the situation.
Mm, mm, mm. It's again this unconscious programming. we story ourselves right out of existence. And then I think, well, then the story itself loses all its power, it diminishes it. So if you really want to give a great apology, it is a leadership skill. And knowing when and how to do it, how to give a great apology does show authentic confidence. And again, it takes effort to reframe. Oh, instead of saying sorry I'm late, thanks for your patience. Instead of saying sorry to bother you, do you have a few minutes? I'd really appreciate your input. Instead of saying you have to spend some mental calories, some energetic calories to do a little bit of a conversion. But oh my goodness, you watch how the room shifts in response to you taking up space like that. That's actually the easiest, quickest way you can take up space is just convert a story into a thank you of some sort or an acknowledgement.
I love that. I love that because that exudes confidence. And
Hmm.
we all need a lot more confidence going forward. We have less than 30
Hmm.
seconds left. Just quickly, what if setting boundaries leads to conflict, criticism, or rejection?
Again, listen, it's the meeting of difference, and we cannot keep abandoning ourselves for someone else's comfort and expect to be aligned with our own happiness. Conflict, criticism, rejection, that's all part of taking up space and taking up it's life. It's part of life. So I'd say if people are getting really judgy, let them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kendra. Kendra says the world doesn't need to be changed by you, it will be changed through you. When you shift internally, everything external shifts. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye for now.